Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to do Chemistry Paper 2, Multiple Choice, May, June 2021. We have 45 minutes to go, so let's get started. Question number 1. A gas is released at point P in the apparatus shown. Okay, so we have a damp universal indicator. Which gas turns the damp universal indicator red most quickly? Okay, so if the universal indicator turn red, this is due to an acid. So acids such as hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid, and more. Okay, so we need an acid that turns the universal indicator red. So ammonia is a base, so it's not an option. Chlorine, it is an acidic gas, so we can say that it has acidic properties. Okay, so hydrogen chloride is also an acidic gas. Sulfur dioxide, since it is a non-metal oxide, it is also acidic. But it's the most quickly, so we are going to, it's asking about diffusion, So we have to relate this with the MR, or the molar mass. Okay, so the chlorine actually is has the least amount of molar mass, which is 70 molar mass, 70 grams per mole. I'm sorry, it has the most, chlorine has the most molar mass, so it has, it's going to diffuse very slowly, so it could not be C, it could not be B, we're going to take that out. Hydrogen chloride, okay, 1 plus 35.5, this is 36.5 grams per mole. The hydrogen chloride, however, has the lowest MR, and therefore the lowest MR diffuses more quickly, and it turns the damp red liquid red, and therefore C is the correct answer. Question number 2. A mixture of colorless compounds is separated using chromatography. Which type of reagent is used to detect the compounds after separation? Okay, a mixture of colorless compound, well, this says us, this is a question asking about chromatography, and we have to know which type of reagent is used to detect these compounds after separation. So to detect this, we are going to use something called a locating agent. These locating agents are used for colorless compounds such as proteins and such as amino acids, glucose, or any type of sugar. They are usually colorless. So we are going to use a locating agent for this. Question number 3. Which statement about paper chromatography is correct? Okay, a solvent is needed to dissolve the paper. This is wrong. We don't need to dissolve the paper. We only need to dissolve the substance or the inks that are contained in a particular substance. So it is not correct. Paper chromatography separates mixtures of solvents. This is also not correct. It separates the mixture of different dyes or inks of different solubilities. Okay, the solvent should cover the baseline. No, it should not. It should always be below the baseline. Remember, the solvent should be below. The solvent should be, so this is our baseline. The solvent should be just below the baseline. Okay, the baseline should be drawn in pencil. This is correct. We don't want to draw with ink because it would ruin the chromatography result. Element X has 7 protons and element Y has 8 more protons than X. Which statement about element Y is correct? So we have to know element Y. So, okay. 8 more protons than element X, so this means it has a proton number. Element Y has a proton number of 15 protons. And this means if it is an element, we can say that it has 15 electrons as well because it is neutral. It is neutral. Okay, so 15 electrons, but element X has 7 electrons. So we can see that element Y has more electrons than element X. Okay. Okay, so it's going to be 2.5. This is going to be 2.8. dot 5. So you can see that element Y has another shell, while element X only have two shells, two electron shells. Meanwhile, element Y has 3 electron shells. So A is the correct answer. Question number 5. A covalent molecule Q only contains 6 shared electrons. What is Q? Okay, 6 shared electrons. It is sharing 6 electrons. Okay, so let's see. Let's see a molecule of ammonia. How does ammonia look like? Ammonia is basically the nitrogen in the middle, and it's going to share with 3 electrons. The hydrogens are going to share 1 electron, while the nitrogen is going to share 1 electron to each hydrogen atom. So basically, the hydrogen we are going to draw with X, the nitrogen we are going to draw with this dot. So if we draw the only outer shell electron, we know that nitrogen has a valency of 5. So 1 nitrogen electron is going to share with each hydrogen atom. And then each hydrogen atom, remember, has only 1, so it's going to share 1. So together they have 6 shared electrons, and therefore E is the correct answer. Question number 6. Information about 4 substances E, F, G is shown. E, F, G, and H are graphite, polyethylene, sodium chloride, silicon 5,4 oxide, but not in the order. What are E, F, and G? Okay, we have to look at the table to determine what it is. So E, we see it has a fairly high melting point. The electrical conductivity is that it does not conduct when solid. So it means that it might conduct electricity when molten. But we don't know that yet, so let's skip that for now. F, we know, okay, we can see that it has a very high melting point, and it also conducts electricity when solid. So this could be a metal. F could be a metal. F could be a metal. But here in the option given, polyethylene, graphite, sodium chloride, silicon oxide, we see that they are all pretty much non-metals, except sodium chloride is a salt. They are all non-metals, but it's a high melting point. This means it could be a giant covalent structure. Giant covalent. So the giant covalent could be graphite and silicon 5 oxide, but really we know that graphite has a free moving electrons, and therefore it can conduct electricity when solid. So now we know the identity of F, which is graphite. Okay, so now let's look at G. G has a melting point of 120, that is very low, and it does not conduct electricity at all. Now this means this is a non-metal, which is plastic. You can see, or we call it polyethylene. Okay, let's look at substance H. It has 801, which is fairly high, and it also conducts electricity only when molten. Now this is a property of ionic compounds, and in the option given, sodium chloride or NaCl, it is a sodium ionic compound. So this leaves us with E being silicon 5 oxide, silicon 4 oxide. So E is going to be silicon 4 oxide, F is going to be graphite, G is going to be polyethylene, H is going to be sodium chloride, therefore D is the correct answer. Question number 7. Chemical compounds form from a group 1 element, and a group 7 element contains ionic bonds. How are ionic bonds formed? Well, this is because the electrons are transferred from group 7 atoms to group 1 atoms. This is wrong. It is the opposite way around. Group 1 atoms transfer the electrons to group 7. Okay, they are not shared because ionic bond, remember, is basically transferring or donating your electrons. It has nothing to do with sharing. Okay, and then electrons are transferred from group 1 to group 7, so we can say that D is the correct answer. Question number 8. Some information about the particles P, Q, R, S is shown. Which 2 particles are isotope of the same element? Remember, what's the meaning of isotope? They have same number of proton, but different number of neutrons. This is a very important. They are also the atoms of the same element. They have the same element. So you have to know this meaning of isotope. Okay. So now first we have to check is okay, so you have different number of neutron, which means they will have different number of nucleon number, or we just call it mass number. You can call it atomic number as well. Atomic mass, I mean. It is nucleon number or atomic mass. You can call it whatever you want to. But here the nucleon number, it is saying it is basically the nucleus, which is basically proton plus neutron. Okay, so we have to find the number of protons first. So how we do this? We can, to find the number of protons, we can say we can from the nucleon number we can subtract the number of neutrons. So 12 minus 6 is 6, 24 minus 12 is 12, 16 minus 8 is 8, 14 minus 8 is 6. So we know that P and S have the same number of protons. They have the same number of protons, and this means they both are they are from the same element, but they have different number of neutrons, which is 6 and 8. And they also do have the same number of electrons. This just further confirms that P and S are isotopes of each other, therefore B is the correct answer. Okay, question number 9. Chlorine gas will react with iron metal. Exactly 21.3 grams of chlorine reacts with 12.2 grams of iron. How many iron atoms will react with 30 molecules of chlorine? Okay, this is a calculation question. It requires you to know the formula mole is equal to mass over mR. So we know we have to find the mole of chlorine and the mole of iron. Okay, so we are going to find them. So firstly we are going to find the mole of Cl2. So this basically the mass is 21.3. Remember one Cl is 35.5. There are 2 chlorine atoms, therefore it's going to be 70. And the iron is going to be 11.2 grams divided by 56, which is the molar mass of iron. Okay, if I put that in my calculator, I am going to get 0.3, approximately 0.30. And then if I find the mole of iron, it's going to be approximately 0.2. So we know that 30 molecules of chlorine reacts. Okay, so 0.3 moles of chlorine will react with 0.2 moles of iron. So we now know that 30 molecules is exactly 0.3 moles. So we want to know how many iron atoms, and this is going to be 20, because as you can see the difference between them is basically 100, so we just multiply 0.2 by 100, so this is 20 molecules. Therefore C is the correct answer. Okay, question number 10. In the separate experiments, electricity was passed through concentrated sodium chloride and molten lead bromide. What would happen in both experiments? Remember, this is concentrated, and the sodium chloride, the NaCl, and the molten lead bromide, PbBr2. Okay, so we want to know what happens in both experiments. Okay, so first of all, we have to know which substances will be selectively discharged. In the case of sodium chloride, there's going to be the sodium ion, there's going to be the chloride ion, there is going to be the hydrogen ion, there are going to be the hydroxide ion. So in the concentrated part, the chlorine gas is going to be formed, the chloride ion is going to get discharged. However, the Na will not get discharged, but the hydrogen ion will get discharged. For the molten lead bromide, it is basically, it is not an aqueous solution, therefore it does not contain the hydrogen ion or the hydroxide ion. So it only contains the lead-2 ion and the bromide ion B. Okay, so it's going to produce bromine gas, and it's going to produce lead at the cathode. So remember, anion go to anode, and cation go to the cathode. So here we see that halogens are being formed in both experiments, And the halogen is an anion, so it will go to the anode, which is the positive electrode, and therefore it is the correct answer, and halogen will be formed at the anode. Okay, question number 11. This is a balancing question. It asks you whether you know how to balance the equation or not. But first of all, I would like to balance the aluminum ion. Second of all, I would balance the hydrogen ions. And thirdly, we are going to balance the oxygen ion. Okay. So we see the aluminum ion is equal with each other, but so it cannot be 1. So we're going to try to put 2 in its place. Now this 2 is going to be multiplied with the whole formula. So there's going to be 6 hydroxide ion. And there are going to be 2 aluminum ions. So the aluminum are already, the X are already balanced. Okay, so now we want to find the hydrogen. Okay, the hydrogen here on the left hand side is 6 times 2 is 12 hydrogen on the left hand side, and there are 2 times 3, which is 6 hydrogen on the left hand side, on the right hand side I mean. So they are not equal, so we need to somehow change the number again. So we cannot, so X could not be 2, it has to be the same one, which is 12. So the X could be 4. X could be 4, so let's try 4 here. So if 4 multiplied by 3, then it's going to give us 12 hydroxide ion, which means there are 12 oxygen atoms and 12 hydrogen atoms. And this 12 hydrogen atoms is going to be balanced with the 12 hydrogen atoms there. And the aluminum is also going to be balanced because both sides are 4. Now that leaves us with oxygen. Now we see that there are also 12 oxygen atoms, so Y is going to be 12 oxygen atoms, so Y is going to be 3. So 3 is, it has to be equal with 12 from the right hand side. So we see that there's already 6 oxygen atom here on the left hand side, so we only need 6 more, which means 3 times 2, which is 3, if Y is equal to 3. And the oxygen atom will also give you 6 oxygen atoms. This will give you 12 oxygen atoms. Now the whole equation is balanced, therefore D is the correct answer. Question 12. 4 fuels, different fuels, are used to heat a beaker of water for the same amount of time using the apparatus shown. The initial temperature of the water and the temperature of the heating fuel are recorded. Which fuel releases the most heat energy? Okay, we want to know which fuel releases the most heat energy. Well, for this question, it's basically finding the difference. You just have to find the difference between the initial and the temperature. Between initial and final, you just have to subtract final from initial and see the temperature rise. So if the temperature rises more, then that fuel releases more heat energy. So basically final minus initial, so I already minus that out for you guys. So 46 minus 17 is 29, 52 minus 24 is 28, 61 minus 26 is 35, and 62 minus 30 is 32. So we see a higher temperature change in C, and therefore it gives out the most heat energy. Okay, moving on to question number 13. In the excess of calcium carbonate reacts with hydrochloric acid, the volume of carbon dioxide produced is measured at regular time intervals. The results are shown on experiment 1. The experiment is repeated with only one change to the reaction conditions. Okay, the results are shown as experiment 2. Okay, so what does this mean? We are going to react the excess calcium carbonate and the hydrochloric acid. Now we are going to measure the volume of CO2 that is being produced at regular time intervals. Okay, that is experiment 1, but the experiment is repeated with only one change to the reaction order, so we have to find this change. What change is made in experiment 2? So we can see in experiment 2 the gradient is steeper. This means that there is a higher rate of reaction. The rate of reaction in experiment 2 is higher than rate of reaction in 1. So we have to find what is the change that is being made. Okay. So it cannot be the mass of calcium carbonate. This is because the question already says that it is in excess. So the mass of calcium carbonate increase is not even an option. Okay, and you can see that the difference is that they have different volume of CO2 that is being produced. So experiment 2 has more CO2 than the experiment 1. So you can see that this is basically due to the concentration of. Okay, this is not due to the concentration of acid, because concentration of acid will only increase the rate. It will not increase the yield of carbon dioxide, so it is not an option. However, the volume of acid increase is correct. If the volume of acid is increased, they will produce more carbon dioxide and is reacting with excess calcium carbonate, and therefore B is the correct answer. Question 14, when sulfur is heated, it undergoes a something change as it is melts. So basically melting. Remember, melting is a physical change. And further heating causes sulfur to undergo a something change to form sulfur dioxide. So to form sulfur dioxide, sulfur will need to react with oxygen. If they react with another element to form another different compound, then this is chemical change. And so 1 is physical, 2 is chemical, so C is the correct answer. Question 15, 4 statements are made about the effect of increasing temperature on the rate of reaction are shown. The activation energy becomes lower, the particles move faster. Okay, if you increase the temperature, remember, if you increase the temperature, the particles will move faster. The activation energy will not become lower. There are more collisions between the reacting particles per second. This is also correct. Because the particles move faster, there will be more faster collisions, effective collisions. There are also more collisions which have energy that is greater than the activation energy. This is correct because temperature is basically increasing the energy. So which 2, 3, and 4 statements are correct. Therefore, C is the correct answer. Question 16. An example of a redox reaction is shown. Which statement about the reaction is correct? Okay, so we see that, remember, an element by itself will always has an oxidation of 0 if it's an element by itself. Okay, so zinc has an initial oxidation state of 0, but then it changes into +2. This is an increase in oxidation. Increase in oxidation is basically oxidation. Now copper, however, it's going from the copper ion +2 to the oxidation state of 0. And this is a decrease in oxidation state and in oxidation number, and therefore copper is undergoing reduction. So zinc reduction, okay? So now it's asking in terms of oxidizing and reducing agent. So remember, when zinc is oxidized, itself is oxidized, that means it reduces copper. So zinc is the reducing agent. This is correct. And it reduces copper. This is correct as well. So D is the correct answer. Question number 17. Okay. When bismuth chloride reacts with water, a white precipitate of bismuth oxychloride is formed. The equation for the reaction is shown. The reaction is in equilibrium. Which changes causes the white precipitate to dissolve? Okay. The white precipitate, which is bismuth oxychloride, this is the solid one, the one that I circled. So what will cause it to dissolve? Okay. So basically, this is a reversible reaction. You can see with the arrow sign, reversible reaction. So if we add the acid, which is hydrochloric acid, which contains the hydrogen ion and the chloride ion, then it is going to dissolve back into bismuth chloride. It's going to turn back into that. So you could add water. Water is also an option. you could add sodium chloride solution as well, because remember sodium chloride solution contains Na plus Cl minus. It also contains hydrogen ion and hydroxide ion, so it can also have increased the number of concentration, which will convert the equilibrium, will convert it back, because if the concentration on the right hand side is more, it's going to convert it into the other product, because the equilibrium always opposes this reaction condition change. Okay, so 1 and 3 are correct. So what does this mean? B is the correct answer. Question 18. Element X forms an oxide XO that neutralizes sulfuric acid. Which rules describe X and XO? Okay, element X. Okay, if it neutralizes an acid, then this element X has to be a basic oxide. And remember, basic oxide only comes from metals. So element X is definitely a metal, and its nature is basic, so B is the correct answer. Question 19. Information about the solubility of salts is shown. Okay, you have to learn your solubility rules. Sometimes they will give you the table, sometimes they won't. But in this case, you have given it. And create solutions of which two compounds would produce a precipitate when added together. Okay. So we just have to know which one is soluble and which one is not soluble. Okay. So barium nitrate, all nitrates are soluble. Okay, so it is also acceptable. Calcium chloride, all chlorides are soluble except lead and silver chloride. So this means that these two aqueous solution, when mixed together, would produce something called barium chloride, which is soluble, and calcium nitrate, which is also soluble. So they will not produce a precipitate. So that's wrong. Now copper sulfate and zinc nitrate. This is going to give us zinc nitrate. And it's going to give us zinc sulfate. Remember, zinc sulfate, all sulfates are soluble except barium and lead. So this is also soluble. Copper nitrates, all nitrates are soluble, so B is not an option either. Now let's look at calcium chloride and sodium sulfate. So since you see that there are two soluble salts that are made of group 1 compounds, this is definitely a no-no, because group 1 salts are always soluble no matter what. So it only leaves us with D. Okay, let's see why. So this is going to form lead nitrate and magnesium sulfate is going to form lead sulfate and magnesium nitrate. Okay, so all nitrates are soluble, but however lead sulfate, remember, lead sulfate is not soluble, therefore D is the correct answer. Question 20. The equation shows the reaction between oxygen and hydrogen. The bond energies are shown. Which rows shows the energy change and the type of reaction? Okay, we have to split the energy change. Remember, the energy change is basically delta H. If you want to find the enthalpy change, we have to remember the formula: bond breaking minus bond making. Okay, so we just have to remember this formula and everything will be well. So remember the type of reaction between oxygen and hydrogen is an exothermic reaction. If you don't remember it, there's another way, because delta H, or the energy change, will always be positive. If it's positive, then it's going to be exothermic. It cannot be an endothermic, therefore B and C are not the correct answer. We can scratch them off. Okay, so we see that there are two hydrogen atoms. Okay, so there's HH, so okay, we are going to just, so 2 times 4, 3, 6, because there are 2 of them, and that is not the end. We still have to the bond breaking between oxygen, which is 495, so we have to plus 495, and then the bond making is we are going to make, basically there's the OH bond, so there are basically 4 OH bond, because if you multiply it by 2, it kind of makes sense. So basically 4 minus 4 times the OH bond energy, which is 463. Now if I put that in my calculator, it is going to give me an answer of, it's going to give me an answer of negative 485. So if the delta H is negative, it means that it is exo. If the delta H is positive, it is endo. Okay, so it's going to give 485, therefore C is the correct answer. Question number 21. Burning fossil fuels release sulfur dioxide, which leads to acid rain. Which ion in rainwater causes it to be acidic? Remember, all acids, the ion that is responsible is the hydrogen ion. Remember always that. Okay. Which statement about trends shown by the element in period 3 in periodic table is not correct? Well, this is the number of electron shells increases across the period. This is not correct, because in the same period, remember, in the same period, they have the same number of electron shells, and that's why the periodic table are grouped that way. Moving on to question number 23, the diagram shows the position of the elements. Which statement about elements are correct? Okay, remember the left side, this is the left of the periodic table, this is the right side. Okay, the left side contains the metals, the right side contains the non-metals, and the middle part contains the transition element. Okay, so let's look at this. So we can see that the E and F is under the group 1, and G and H is under group 7. Okay, so this is basically asking us their properties. So E has a higher density than F. This is wrong, because as you go down the group, the density increases. Okay, E has a higher melting point than F. This is correct, because group 1 metals are, the lower you go, the lower the melting point it gets. It's kind of different from the usual trend. So G has a darker color than H. This is wrong. As you go down the group in the group 7, they become more darker. As you go above, the colors become more paler. So G has a lower melting point than H. This is correct. So 2 and 4 are correct, therefore D is the correct answer. Question 24, when aqueous iodine is placed in a solution of vanadium ions, the vanadium ions lose 1 electron. Which property of transition elements is shown by this reaction? Well, this is so that they have variable oxidation states, and therefore E is the correct answer. Remember 25. A piece of aluminum is dropped in dilute hydrochloric acid. No immediate reaction is observed. So why is this? Well, this is because aluminum is a very reactive metal. So before it reacts with hydrochloric acid, it's going to react with oxygen, and it's going to form this aluminum oxide layer. This aluminum oxide layer is very unreactive. It's going to prevent the aluminum in contact to react with the hydrochloric acid, and therefore D is the correct answer. Question 26. Some metals, nitrates, and carbonates decompose when heated strongly. Metal Q has a nitrate that decomposes to give salt and colorless gas only. Okay, a nitrate that gives a salt and a colorless gas only. Okay, the carbonate of metal Q does not decompose when heated. This means this is highly likely it is a group 1 metal, because group 1 metals are very stable, and stable compounds, they do not decompose easily. So metal Q is definitely going to be sodium, which is C. 27. Aluminum is extracted from its ore by electrolysis. Which equation represents the reaction that occurs at the anode during the electrolysis? The anode is basically the positive electrode. Remember, an ion goes to anode. I have been telling that a long time. An ion, which is the negative ion, always go to the anode. Okay, so the negative ion in the aluminum extraction is basically the oxygen atom. So it's going to be in the anode, it's going to be oxidized, which means it's going to lose electrons. So therefore C is the correct answer. 28. Mild steel consists mainly of iron. It can be prevented from rusting by a process called galvanizing. Copper is not a very strong metal. However, if it's mixed with suitable metal, a strong alloy called brass is produced, which is correct. So the second statement is correct. The first statement is also correct. Okay, so copper corrodes very quickly when wet and brass does not. Well, this we cannot say that. So copper is mixed with zinc to produce brass. This is correct. This is very correct. There is actually 70% copper in brass and 30% zinc in brass. 29. Water is used for the irrigation of crops and for drinking water. For which uses must water be chlorinated? Well, obviously chlorination is to kill the microorganism. And this means it is used for drinking water. However, for the water to water the plants, you don't need them. So for irrigation, you don't need water that is chlorinated. So C is the correct answer. 30. Which natural resources cannot provide a raw material for the manufacture of ammonia? So remember, ammonia is basically the nitrogen in the air reacting with the hydrogen. This is going to form the ammonia. Remember, this is a reversible reaction, so use the reversible arrow signs. Okay, so air, this provides nitrogen, so it says which cannot provide natural resources, so it's not A. Limestone cannot provide any of the reactants, which is nitrogen and hydrogen. It does not provide anything. Petroleum, they do provide, because petroleum is basically long chain alkanes. If you crack them, you can contain hydrogen from the cracking of long chain hydrocarbons. From water, also from the electrolysis of water, you can obtain hydrogen. So B is the only one that is not obtainable. 31. Ammonia is made in a Haber process. Which conditions are used in a Haber process? Well, remember, CIE likes to ask you very specific reaction conditions as well. You have to remember those. You also have to remember the contact process, which is process for the manufacture of sulfuric acid. So you have to remember the conditions as well. Remember, in the Haber process, the temperature used is 450. The pressure, or the atmosphere's pressure, we use 200 atmospheres. And the catalyst used is iron, and therefore A is the correct answer. 32. Which process in the carbon cycle is responsible for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere? So we are taking in carbon dioxide. Which process? This is photosynthesis. Basically, the plants, they take in carbon dioxide and it reacts with water to produce glucose and oxygen. So C is the correct answer. 33. The equations represent two reactions P and Q of lime. Lime is calcium oxide. Remember, I want you to know lime is calcium oxide, quicklime is calcium hydroxide, limestone is calcium carbonate. You have to know these other forms without knowing their chemical names as well. In which processes do these reactions occur? So the first equation, this occurs in the blast furnace during the extraction of iron. This is to remove impurities. This reaction occurs to remove impurities such as silicon dioxide. So P is used in the extraction of iron, and the calcium oxide is used to desulfurize the flue gas or the sulfur dioxide, and therefore B is the correct answer. 34. Which statement about ethanol is not correct? We have to say the opposite. Okay, ethanol can be made by fermentation. This is correct. Ethanol is oxidized to make ethanol acid. This is also correct. Ethanol reacts with oxygen exothermically, making it a good fuel. It is also correct. Ethanol reacts with propanoic acid to make propyl ethanoate. Now this is wrong, because remember the acid, the carboxylic acid is going to become the ion, or the propanoate. It's going to end with propanoate, and then the alcohol part is going to become the ethyl group. So it's going to be ethyl propanoate, not propyl ethanoate, and therefore D is not correct. Okay, question 35. Which pair of formulae represent two alkanes? Remember, alkanes, they have the general formula. Alkanes, general formula is they have the general formula CnH2n plus 2. So basically, if N is equal to 1, C is going to be CH4. This is going to be methane. If it's going to be C8, it's going to be 18, because 2 times 8 is 16. 16 plus 2 is 18. So the first pair is correct. 36, which statement about alkanes is correct? Remember, this is alkanes, which means they have carbon-carbon single bonds. They have single. All of them are single. Okay? They do not contain double bonds. They do not contain ionic bonds. They contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Remember, alkanes are hydrocarbons, which means they only contain hydrogen and carbon atoms. They do not contain oxygen atoms. However, they do burn in oxygen. This is called combustion. Therefore, A is correct answer. 37. Which statement about ethanoic acid are correct? It is a strong acid? No. Ethanoic acid is a very weak acid. That's why you can eat it. It is found in vinegar. It reacts with ethanol to form an ester. This is correct. An ester can be formed when you react the alcohol and the carboxylic acid. Okay, it has the formula CH3COH. This is correct. This is the formula of ethanoic acid. So 2 and 3 is correct. Therefore, C is the correct answer. 38. The flow chart shows how petroleum may be turned into a plastic. What are process 1, 2, and 3? So process 1 is where cracking occurs, because the petroleum or the long chain alkanes are going to be cracked into saturated hydrocarbons. I'm sorry. The first step of step 1 is actually fractional distillation, where they are going to go through the fractionating column, and they are going to be turned into different types of hydrocarbons, different types of alkanes. And then from there, we are going to use the lower end of the bottom of the fractionating column, which is very useless, such as bitumen, fuel oil, and so on. And so we're going to crack them to produce alkanes, which are unsaturated, and therefore process 2 is cracking. Process 3 is where we see this process called addition polymerization, and therefore C is the correct answer, because it is turning into plastic. Okay, 39. The structure of a synthetic polymer is shown, which the structure shows that it is formed by something polymerization, which words complete what gaps 1 and 2. Okay, first thing I notice here is that I notice the repeated linkage. This linkage is called the amide linkage. If it contains an amide linkage, we can call that it is a polyamide. So 1, it is a polyamide. And polyamides are formed by condensation, polymerization. Basically, condensation is a product that produces more than one product. So it produces water as a byproduct. A small molecule is eliminated. That's why we call it condensation, because water is basically removed. So B is the correct answer. 40. Which substances is a natural polymer? In natural polymer, we have 3 different substances. This is protein, we have fats, and we have glucose or starch. They are natural polymers that are being synthesized in our bodies. So protein, therefore D is the correct answer. So I hope you understand every single thing that I have explained to you about. If you have any doubts, you can leave them at the comments down below. Okay, also please let me know if you do like it. Give us a thumbs up. Consider subscribing for more. I'll be posting for the October-November CIE takers as well. So don't worry, guys. Okay. So see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.